This one's going to be important for the review series I'm going to do for the game that's after AVGN Adventures. Or before. I haven't decided yet. What's up everybody, StevDeS here. With all the games out there, there's a whole lot of different ways to interpret what games need to be played and which games really should be hitting the dustbin. But one of the most important parts of gaming is there's a game out there for everybody. Are you a soldier ready to take the battlefield by storm with your skills with a firearm? Then FPS is for you. Are you an adventurer, someone who enjoys watching the scenery as you're saving the kingdom or whatever place you happen to be in, all the while enjoying the nice sights and the wonderful people in this amazing fantasy world? Free roam adventure. Are you the kind of person that enjoys a mild bit of excitement where your decisions could mean life or death? Action. Or perhaps you're that person that likes to really make the use of what you have in order to survive against a terrifying force, and running out of supplies could very well mean your own death at the hands of this hellish horde. Survival horror. The list goes on, but you see what I'm getting at here? With all these different games, not all of them can be good. So how do we look at which games are good and which games are bad? This is where game ratings are concerned, and no, I'm not talking about ESRB, that's for ages. Can't believe you took out kids or adults. Jerks. To find out if a game is good or bad, typically the internet is one of the best places to go. Even so, some of the review systems do leave some questions in gamers' minds. Now I'm going to go through some of these sites, and as far as the information gathered, links are in the description in order for you to read up on your own to see how they do things as far as their rating systems. When it comes down to the likes of GameSpot, IGN, and Metacritic, their reviews are structured, I'll give them that, but a lot of the time you'd have to actually read through the review. A lot of the time people don't really care about what goes into rating the game, they just care about that overall score. That's not how games today should be rated, in my opinion. And yes, I just said that you'd have to read the review in order to disagree or agree, but that's where sites like these kind of suffer. They're not as interactive as the next part of this topic. Okay, so they're not as interactive. Fair enough. Well, what do they do? Let's look at GameSpot first. GameSpot hires editors, video producers, freelancers to play the game, see how they feel about it, and then judge it based on a system of 0 to 10. Like I said, you'd have to read the review yourself in order to see any agreements or disagreements. Metacritic compiles critic reviews all across the internet to make one Metascore, which, I mean, that's a pretty good system. What better person than the person that's critiquing the work? Surely a critic knows what they're doing. IGN's method is where they play the game and they talk about it with several other people and make an argument as to how well it fits in the franchise that it's representing. Metacritic has the same problem as GameSpot. The score's kind of generalized. If you have one critic that makes a living reviewing racing games, and you have another critic that makes a living reviewing FPSs, and the game in contrast is an FPS, their views are definitely going to differ. IGN, however, has a very opposite problem as far as what I've seen. Now keep in mind all of these are my opinion. Hence, StevDeS RANTS. It's too focused as far as the small group of people making a decision, and these small group of people may have very different ideals than a majority of gamers out there. Not to say the sites don't do a good job, but surely there are rating systems that do things better and do things worse. I celebrate the different rating systems out there, I really do. I especially celebrate the Steam one because that one is purely user run. Now, I'm not going to ignore, and this is the second part by the way, the different YouTubers that do video game reviews on the site, because there's already a whole handful of them. Again, I have nothing against anyone's opinion. This is just my opinion as to how certain sites and certain people review their games, and what kind of impression that leaves on me. You're welcome to agree, and you're welcome to disagree. While I have nothing against video game reviewers, their method of reviewing games does offer a very private point of view. There's a lot of words you can get out in an 11-minute video versus what you can get out on a YouTube comment. Sure, the comments section does in fact fix this problem. It allows the YouTuber to talk with their fans in order to really come to a decision as to if they did the review fairly or if they didn't. This is a more interactive way of deciding which games really need to be remembered and which ones should just burn for all eternity. The only problem I have with this is a lot of these reviews are played off for entertainment's sake. So, how do we know which score is actually clear? With entertainment for a platform like YouTube, I really don't see that being a problem, but again, the score is unclear. Some reviewers I looked up for this StevDeS rant, The Completionist and Kedicarus, they have odd scoring systems, but they do have a scoring system in place for the games that they review. They do explain their thoughts creatively, and they do end up keeping you entertained through the entirety of the video. The Completionist has this scale, which tells you how he feels the game should be received. Kedicarus actually just saves or kills the game. Just takes a gun or some heaven beam. How does that thing work? Regardless, he's got a clear yes or no for his gaming system. Other reviewers, such as NitroRad or Yahtzee from Zero Punctuation, takes their review slightly differently. They show how they feel about a game in question, but they don't really have a scoring system. Not to say opinions aren't valid. I mean, I can't tell you that your opinion about anything, even this video, is wrong. It's your opinion to have. But opinions do differ a lot, don't they? Their opinion may not be as similar,
the Cerberus testicle bowlers,
or as colorful, but it is different to the viewers, which is what we kind of need in the world today. Now, while saying that does disprove what I'm about to say, honestly, opinions never really function well with me. What I think we need is a review system that sticks out. Not only would a system like this answer the questions that gamers have before they purchase a game, but the system would in fact answer a few things as far as what the gamer didn't even think about. What I think we need is a review system that not only answers what the gamer has as far as questions are concerned, but one that has a few points to back up that claim. In order to answer what kind of review system would work, let's go ahead and ask what goes into a game. And I know probably a lot of you decided to answer as soon as I asked that question, graphics! With the argument that a game is as good as it looks, that needs to be thrown in the garbage! Come on, people, the bit wars were decades ago, and you're still falling for this crap! We really have to redefine the word graphics, because clearly it's become more of a selling point than actually part of what makes a good game a good game. According to Google, the word graphics means the products of the graphic arts, especially commercial design or illustration. Another generalized term. Let's go a little bit more specific on this. TechTerms.com defines a graphic as an image or visual representation of an object. I think that one's closer to what we're looking for. In a video game, it's important for you to see an object and be able to define it as that object. I believe graphics really aren't that important to the final product, but they sure are important because you don't want to be staring at a black screen when you're playing a video game. To say graphics aren't important is just blatant stupidity. To see that sword on the ground over there and know that it is in fact a sword is important, and that's what graphics do for us. It doesn't have to be pretty, but it does have to be functional. A lot of games overhype the visual quality of their game without actually considering the game's quality itself. Let's look at Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, a classic in a lot of gamers' eyes. Great scores across the board, the graphics function as they should. Whenever you see bullets flying, they're bullets flying. Now, let's look at Undertale. A totally different game, but the graphics still function the way they should, regardless of how many bits there are. Regardless of the style, both games do show you what they want to show you and show you exactly what needs to be seen in the games. So for graphics, let's say 5 things need to be accounted for. Appeal, as in it's gotta look decent, you don't want to look at a pile of crap all this time. Definition, you can tell what borders what and what objects aren't part of another object. Clarity, it's clear what that object is in the first place. Immersion, you do believe that this object, these graphics need to be here because it all flows. And tone, does the object match the tone of the game? All of these should come into question, and as far as out of 100, graphics would be a 5 in my opinion. Hold on, StevDeS, only 5%? What's wrong with you? Flag the video and unsubscribe. He doesn't like the beauty of these games. He thinks all these games are ugly. He likes 16-bit and 8-bit games! Due to how overhyped graphics in video gaming is nowadays, it's important that as gamers we don't look at that as a major selling point. Gaming is more of an art form now than it was before, so we really need to focus on what makes it more of an art rather than looking at it. Gaming is far more interactive than that movie you saw over the weekend. Unless it's the Dora movie. Other factors need to be brought to the forefront, like control. One of the most important parts of any game is being able to play it. However, I would define control as more than just being able to play the game. In this case, I would define it as understanding what you're able to use and how you're able to use it, as well as how well you're able to use the set control scheme. This is the part where I would be a bit more lenient, as the control scheme and being able to use it differs based on the skill level of the player. However, for the sake of argument, let's go ahead and compare Super Mario 64 with... I just realized when I do a review series, I'm gonna have to play Bubsy 3D. I'm shooting myself in the foot! Oh! The controls in Super Mario 64 are, well, they put the gamer in control. They feel really smooth. Mario's movement actually feels good. The more you move the stick, the faster he runs. It makes sense. It's comfy, it's interactive, and the graphics complement the control scheme. In a 3D environment, it's important that you also control the camera. With the C buttons, the R button, you can control the camera and where it goes. It's a great example of how to control a camera in a 3D environment. That way you're in control over what you see. But not only are you in control of what you see, you're also in control of how you act in the game. Do I have to talk about Bubsy 3D? I mean, it's obvious it sucks. The controls are not intuitive. They very much restrict the gamer. If a game restricts your control in any way, shape, or form without having a logical reasoning to restrict that control, the game will definitely suffer for it. For control, let's add another 25 points to that 100-point list that I'm making. If the controls don't feel and act intuitively, then the game will definitely suffer for it. 25 out of 100. With how gaming started to today, a story needed to be in place for all of these titles. A game's story not only gives meaning to the characters within the game, but it also gives the player a purpose for playing. Let's look at 2 good examples this time. The Legend of Zelda for NES and The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. In The Legend of Zelda for the NES, the only way you're going to get the story is by either looking it up online or looking at the instruction booklet that the game came with. But let's say you didn't. let's say you're just going into this game. You know you're the hero, you know there's a big bad that needs to be stopped, and you know there's probably a princess named Zelda who needs to be saved. Let's do it. Even though you meet a few shopkeepers and other people in hidden areas in the game, there really isn't much use for them. Hero travels through magic medieval land to defeat bad guy. Yay. In Wind Waker, thanks to the age and how video games have progressed, it's a lot more complicated than that. Of age, young man witnesses sister napping and joins pirates to save, but find out he is hero of legend on epic quest to save world from the evil man. Introduced in beginning of the game. It's a lot to fit into a beginning. Over time, several franchises have learned that a good story in a video game really can lead to several great things for that franchise. Through the in-game environment, the graphics, the control scheme matching what the character's supposed to do, and a good story to provide some sort of importance for the gamer to be doing what they're doing in the game is how a game really needs to function in order for it to be a franchise that we know for years to come. 30 out of 100. To add on to this flowing wheel that I am constructing, the characters. Now the reason I separate the two is because, well, even though you can meet shopkeepers and NPCs that really don't lend themselves to the story, there are important characters that do affect the story. So I don't confuse anyone, let's call characters characters and story characters story characters. Story characters directly influence how the story plays out. Characters that you find around the world are just there for world building, and a lot of them, as we've learned, have a lot of good personalities to them, allowing the gamer to feel more entertained. Your hero could be kind of a jerk, or just plain unrelatable, and therefore your thought of that story character suffers. Story characters aren't limited to just the hero and the good guys, though. It's also related to the villains. For this, let's compare the Jak and Daxter games with the Mario franchise. You know what? Let's throw Call of Duty in there, just to be safe on this. Let's start with the easy one, Mario. Mario's brave and heroic. Player 2 Luigi is kinda cowardly and kinda goofy, but he still hangs out and he's loyal to his brother. Princess is the damsel in distress. Whew, I was about to curse on that one. And Bowser, the big evil king, ruler of the Koopa Kingdom. Super Mario Bros. Without a story has enough colorful characters to actually make the world very entertaining. Even if Mario was just having a casual day, you still have such powerful characters and such colorful characters that they're able to build the world in an extremely good way, allowing the story characters to have more meaning because these characters have less meaning. But that doesn't make us stop loving them. Characters help make the world more enjoyable. In the Jak and Daxter trilogy, Daxter's comedic personality works well off of Jak's heroic excitement. Kira is also a strong character in the sense that she's the smart one. She is there to help Jak directly. Even Samos's old man wise words do help when it comes down to this. All of these elements come together to defeat the big bads at the end of the first game. While you see less and less of Kira and Samos as the games go on, you still get Jak and Daxter working off of each other, which is a breath of fresh air. Every time I see these two going at it, I just think, why didn't Jak speak in the first one? Huh. A lot of missed opportunities. The other characters in Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy are just to build the world, just like the other characters in the other Jak games. They're not important or integral to the plot, they're not story characters. Well, some of them kind of are, but you just don't see them enough for them to be particularly important. Even Bowser's minions got their own game. Jak and Daxter's supporting cast just doesn't add like Mario's supporting cast does. Now let's look at World at War. Roebuck, Polanski, Miller, Dmitry Petrenko, and even Sullivan in the beginning. They're pretty forgettable. Viktor Reznov really is the only memorable character in that game, in my opinion. Viktor Reznov even got another cameo. Sure, Viktor Reznov was a hallucination in Black Ops, but honestly, his personality shone through. Viktor Reznov is a more memorable character because of how colorful his character is. Instead of grungy soldier, he's the wise soldier. You're learning from him. But I doubt that a character that outshines your character is going to hold up a game on his own. Bottom line, story characters build story, and characters just build themselves. At the time, Viktor Reznov wasn't really much of a story character. He was just more of a supporting character. You were the story character. Story was 30, so I guess I'll drop the characters down to 25. There's nothing like a memorable character to get you back into a story or a game series. The last 15 out of 100, I'd say would belong to gameplay. I would define gameplay as how a game represents its genre and what it does to present itself as that genre. Considering how broad a term genre is, I think it's important that we look at the game far more than its genre is concerned. For this, let's look at a couple of games that represent its gameplay. And gameplay can be split into representation, presentation, and difficulty. For these topics, let's look at Dark Souls games, Kirby's games, and MOBAs. In Dark Souls, the difficulty stays high, as if you're unprepared for something, it's more than likely going to kill you. However, this plays to it because whenever you're playing a Dark Souls game, you're going to expect it to be hard. They've made this representation of their franchise clear. When you see From Software in your game, you know you're in for something. You're gonna have a bad time. Dark Souls 2 had a slightly different mechanic than the other Dark Souls games, which I'd probably maybe take half a point off for that, because it still represented the Dark Souls franchise extremely well. When you see your environment, your health gauge, your stamina, all the other things that go into it, you know you're playing a Dark Souls game, where presentation does matter. Kirby is going to be the same as far as presentation and representation, but the difficulty curve is kind of opposite. However, you expect a Kirby game to be easier because it's a Kirby game. It's intended for children. And honestly, yeah, that's Kirby in a nutshell. You expect a Kirby game to be easier because it's a Kirby game. A lot of Kirby's games are actually quite easy. They're more for the casual gamer and they're more for kids. But does it suffer for being much easier than other games in Nintendo's franchises? I'm thinking no. Due to that representation, Kirby's games being easier than normal games would definitely add to it. It has an average amount of challenges in it, and it's very much a casual game. Not really harmful in any way, but if a gamer decided to lose 20 lives on one level, you really have to question what the gamer's doing, because clearly they're not playing the game right. Most MOBAs, as they should, represent themselves as strategy games. This is where pesky little opinions can get in the way of the legitimate rating of this video game. So, let's tackle this. First off, a MOBA's representation cannot be for the genre. Let's leave that for presentation. When you look at a MOBA game, you better expect that it is in fact a MOBA. League of Legends, Dota, Smite, all of these really lend themselves to the name of a multiplayer online battle arena. While someone might like Smite's mechanics, others might like Dota or League of Legends. You know, there's several different MOBAs out there, all with somewhat differing play styles to them. Like and dislike. Opinion words. Let's think about this. To make a functioning review for a MOBA, the mechanics need to be the priority. The mechanics are kind of important because it determines what's comfy to the gamer and what isn't. Therefore, the representation is based in the mechanics of the game rather than the game just being another MOBA. Presentation can purely be about the genre here. It's a MOBA. But what about difficulty? Unfortunately, when you put the word multiplayer in front of something, the difficulty's not as clear. It's important to understand that if you're going to review a MOBA, that the difficulty curve is going to be random, because you don't know who you're playing against. It's such a random variable that it's not really reliable, and if you're going to judge a MOBA, you really can't judge it based on difficulty. With a review system that looks like this, I think we could have a much better review system for games in the future. But what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think each part flows well to make the gaming landscape that we know and love? Leave a comment below. This will be the review system that I use for a future video game review series on this channel. So if you don't want to miss that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!